Battlin Boxer is a Zexal-era archetype played by this silly little guy in the anime. The Japanese name of the archetype is Burning Knuckler, which is a more fitting description for them as they're all knuckleheads. While I wasn't planning to divert the course of this series with the other 3 archetypes planned before this, the mere act of playing with the newest support compelled me to make this video. They are an archetype that revolve around boxing, which in their mechanical design means a strong emphasis on the battle phase. However, their design, even with the latest support, is exceptionally weak. So let's talk about their technique and see what it is that they need to work on. Round 1 of the Battlin Boxers released in Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy alongside Dragon Rulers. Not exactly starting with a winning fight, but to their credit, they were still a decent budget deck at the time. They could even use Blaster, but of course you were just better off playing Dragon Rulers at the time. Headgeared, our first boxer, lets you foolish a Battlin Boxer on normal and has battle protection once per turn. He's not exactly a heavy hitter for the archetype, but he's still plenty strong for the deck. Glassjaw is the card you're meant to send with Headgeared, as he can get back a Battlin Boxer from grave. Glassjaw sucks in battle though. He's got a big attack stat on him, but if a monster comes at him, he blows up. Given him blowing up triggers his recursion effect as well. The only issue is there's no way Glassjaw is making it to the battle phase in modern day. Fortunately for him, Headgeared at least ensures one Glassjaw has room in the deck. Switch Hitter is another normal summon for the deck that is more so designed as follow-up to Headgeared, since he revives a Battlin Boxer. The problem is that this effect locks you into boxers. This archetypal lock is a detriment to the deck's design, and I don't know that it was really worth implementing even back during this era. Oh no, Battlin Boxer can make a rank 4 relatively easily. The horror! The other problem with Switch Hitter in Modern is the fact the deck is designed around normal summoning both Headgeared and Switch Hitter. But with the speed of Modern, that isn't happening. Sparer is an extender for the archetype, but at the expense of forfeiting your battle phase. Battlin Boxers. Can't battle. Wonderful. I assume the battle phase skip is tied to the idea of sparring being non-competitive, but of course, this means the card is really bad going second in a modern context. It wasn't exactly appealing back then, but you could make do. Not really the case anymore though. Maybe you play one going first if the deck gets more searching, and is that desperate for extension, but this one will probably remain a relic of the past. The last main deck body of the initial wave is Counterpunch, a level 3 in a rank 4 strategy. He's a worse Kaluk. I at least appreciate the idea of some of the Battlin Boxers being designed as battle traps in hand, but we did not come out swinging with this one. There is the added benefit that you can use the effect from grave as well, but obviously your opponent can dodge a counterpunch they see coming. The rank 4s that the deck would start with are Lead Yoke and Cestus. Lead Yoke was part of why the deck was so decent as a budget option. He protects your boxers from destruction by detaching a material, and he gains 800 whenever a material is detached from him. So he can protect your monsters and get massive doing so. He isn't necessarily a win con by himself by modern standards. His protection effect is only for one boxer, so if your opponent drops a board wipe or a multi-pop, Lead Yoke Insurance doesn't cover that. It makes him less impressive as an end board piece, but he's still worthwhile all the same. Granted, the deck actually gets better at making more than one rank 4. Star Cestus, on the other hand, is far less impressive. Star is a 3 material XC, and his effect isn't all that useful for the investment that he is. If a boxer battles, he can shut off a monster's effect to give the attacking monster battle protection, and reflect the damage you would have taken from that battle, hinting at the idea that you'd punch in with a weaker boxer to shut off a monster's effect, then hit them with reflect damage as a 1-2 combo. Like I said, Star is too niche in gameplay, and costs 3 materials. If that weren't an issue, he'd certainly be worthwhile. But since he revolves around having more boxes on field, and he costs 3, not exactly a sound design decision. Of course, with Rank Up Magic Variance Force being in this set as well, Star released alongside its Chaos counterpart, Comet Cestus. While Star served as a more supportive role, Comet is far more aggressive. His base effect is just a worse Flame Wingman effect. I don't know why it couldn't have been the full stat, but sure. Comet's Chaos effect lets you pop a monster, then your opponent gets burned for the full stat. Once again, not entirely worthless on paper, but certainly not good enough in practice. But of course, support can always alleviate the issues with both cestises, like spells or traps, the thing the archetype released with zero of. Whoops! 6 months later, they'd receive support in Shadow Specters, a set that debuted Malice Vorus, the Baby Raccoons, and Vampires as an actual archetype, along with a lot of support for existing archetypes like Bujin and Ghost Trick. The competition in this round wasn't exactly stacked, so this could have been their chance to shine. But, something odd happens in this wave. We get 2 more level 3s and a rank 3. I think we're taking a dive this round. Okay, it's not that bad on paper. I think it's actually nice that they didn't want to pigeonhole the archetype into one rank, but it's going to take a lot of fleshing out to give that cohesion. Rib Gardna is another hand effect to transport our boxer. That's a bit of an issue. It's a neat niche tool, but not exactly what the deck is looking for. Add to that the fact we're introducing a rank 3, and 2 of the existing level 3s are hand traps you're not meant to summon, with them also banishing themselves so you can't revive them. Seems like there just might be a slight logistical issue with the existence of these cards. Rabbit Puncher, the other 3, while not a hand trap that banishes itself, doesn't really do anything either. He destroys a defense position monster he battles. Yeah, there's not a lot of cohesion with the existing main deck, and since there's no benefit to normaling him over any of the 4s, and there's no grave effect to combo with the deck's other guys, he doesn't open up any Xyz plays with the other 3s. Together, these cards don't really serve a purpose for the archetype. The payoff for playing them is Cheat Commissioner. He forces your opponent's monsters to battle and can't be targeted for an attack while you control another boxer. When an attack is declared involving another boxer, you can detach 2 from Commissioner. Look at your opponent's hand, then if they have a spell, set it to your field. Commissioner is a neat card despite his awkward implementation. Hand ripping is cringe, but it is attached to going to battle and only stealing a spell. The odds you actually do that aren't very high, as this implies it's turn 2 or 3, a point in the game where your opponent has likely spent their spells already. So realistically, this guy gives you hand knowledge on a hand you probably already know, something that's entirely useless. Unless, of course, your opponent is playing Runic, in which case, he's actually the best card ever printed. Just don't think about how Runic functions, and it's genius. They would land 1 good blow this round with Battling Boxing Spirits. By sending a card from the top of the deck to grave, you can reborn a boxer, helping the deck immensely at Xyz summoning. One annoying part though, if you hit Glassjaw off the top, he misses timing.
No, don't go on the top rope! Don't go on the top rope! Don't go on the top rope! No, I can't take it! I can't do it! Ah!
I have to make a video on timing at some point, it's driving me insane. Something else about Spirits that has me do a double take every time I see it is the art. So in the anime, a lot of the cards tend to have these weird looking low definition artworks that look like screenshots from the anime. Usually these cards never get printed, or if they do, their artwork becomes more defined and polished to fit with the rest of the game's artwork. But Spirits looks just like it does in the anime, leaving me shocked when there's a Duel Links card in my physical hand. Round 3 would start in Primal Origin half a year later, releasing alongside Artifacts, Sylvans, Madolche and Jelly, and the undisputed GOAT, No Penguin. It's okay, kid, just keep your head up, throw in some tough jabs and a killer hook and we'll be back in it. We start with Big Bandage, a level 2. Okay, it's fine. He adds once per turn battle protection like Headgeared, and despite being a level 2, Bandage actually corrects the issues with the 3s. You can target a boxer that is in grave or banishment, then convert all your boxers on field to the same level. The fact he can select from grave or banishment means he can choose 4 or 3, making it so you can really choose the rank toolbox you want to lean into. Granted, you haven't used Switch Hitter to lock you into boxers. In which case, there's only 1 3 you can make, because they didn't decide to make another one. There's also the fact you can just spend one of the 3s from your hand and then use Bandage's effect to copy their level to the field, establishing this neat little combo. It's just a shame they don't have good effects on those 3s or a good rank 3 payoff. In a vacuum, Bandage is an impressive card, but sadly, the rest of the deck has to stop pulling their punches for his own to land. He's also a 2, which gives the deck access to Sprint. I don't know what you're gonna do with that, but It's funny. The other main deck name introduced this round is Vale. He's not very good. When you take battle damage, you can special summon him from hand, then recover the points you lost. This is meant to be a defensive measure to stave off damage, and to potentially put another 4 on field for you to seize with next turn, but isn't quite there by modern standards. Vale was a Duel Link staple, and that's about his only legacy. You can combo Vale with Star Cestus specifically, crashing a Boxer to summon Vale, to then ram Vale into a big monster and use Star to reflect that damage entirely, but that seems way too specific a scenario to be realistically relevant. One card that isn't specifically from the archetype, but is worth mentioning in relation, is Dawn Thousand's Throne. This is a card that more broadly supports all the Chaos numbers, effectively allowing you to dodge battle with a number to tag out into its Chaos form. You can also use it when you battle, but the battle negation is less appreciated in that scenario. Considering it relies on battle happening, this hasn't stood the test of time. And the attack negation during your own attack lessens the potency of this card when used offensively. So why do I bring it up? I think now's a good time to address an issue. The archetype has no way to get a rank up magic consistently. Considering they want you to play Comet, this is going to become an issue that gets worse with time the longer it goes unaddressed. So, as of this point, you're likely playing any number of rank up and rank up adjacent cards in order to even summon Comet. But truthfully, you aren't even playing the deck at this point. The last piece of support from this round would be the introduction of the archetype's sub-archetype of counter-counter traps. Starting with Last Counter. When an attack is declared involving a Boxer, you negate the attack, send the Boxer involved to grave, then another Boxer gains attack equal to the sent one's. The battle then changes to the Boxer that got buffed, and because there wasn't already enough going on in this card, you take damage equal to the attack gained. A year later, in World Superstars, we'd get the real Last Counter and Jolt Counter. The set was a swan song for Zexal archetypes, featuring missing pieces for decks like Chronomaly, Heraldic, Galaxy, Onomat, among many others. Jolt Counter continues the theme the original set, a battle phase counter trap. Jolt Counter is an omni-negate, but since it's only live during the battle phase, it's not very good. I certainly think it's salvageable, but it'll take some work. Battlin Boxer Shadow, a card that probably should have been released in Shadow Specters, is a half-decent extender. He lets you yoink a material off a Boxer Xyz to summon himself. Considering the fact the deck was hurting to get into an Xyz consistently, this wasn't exactly the type of extender the deck was longing for. But he can always make a comeback, provided the fighters he shadows get better. The last card of the archetype, before its modern wave of support, would be Nova Kaiser, a 2-material rank 4 that gains 100 attack for each material attached to it. He can attach a Boxer from grave or hand as material once per turn. He also has the effect that when it's destroyed by your opponent's card, you can summon Boxer 4s up to the materials attached to him from grave. This would be an insanely cool card, with the word when not printed on it. Yes, he can miss timing. Realistically, the only way to get this effect off is to crash him, which goes against his first effect of attack gaining. Well, it goes against it in principle, but realistically the buffs are so pathetic you probably can crash him. We're left with yet another fighter holding back on his punches. 10 years after their introduction, legendary duelist Soul-Burning Volcano would introduce Round 5 for the Boxers, coming alongside Salamandrate and Volcanic, two other fire decks that historically had better performances than them. With this type of competition, 10 years in the future, they couldn't keep going on pulling their punches. They had to come out swinging with Cosmic Force, and yet they didn't. Promoter is an insane card, being an archetypal rescue monster. It can get 2 Boxers on the field, while also being a free summon if your opponent has a monster. This can summon 2 of the 3s for a rank 3. Then you can put those 3s in grave by detaching them to set up their grave effects. Except you can't. Promoter Boxer locks you. This wave of support doesn't introduce a link or a new rank 3 worth summoning. I really don't understand why they couldn't just give them an Xyz lock instead. Because of this, you're only really going to use him to make rank 4s. He gives you the ability to modulate your Boxers on field with his grave effect, but once again, only the rank 4s are worth summoning. And the 5s are only meant to be summoned with rank up magic. This feels more like a design obligation to justify the existence of 3s, rather than a genuine attempt to resolve the issues they had in the context of the deck. He does give you a neat combo with Bandage, being able to convert levels twice, but I don't think that's getting the mileage that it should be. The next card to revitalize this strategy would be Chief Second. He provides you with an additional normal summon of a Boxer. Since the deck has 2 cards it wants to normal summon, this makes sense. The issue is, you're likely going to use your first normal on Chief. Unless you have Promoter exactly to summon him from. Not really bad, since this does facilitate your Xyz summoning regardless, but considering he doesn't summon himself easily, and he's the only one in the lineup that does provide another normal summon, that can be negated by the way, he doesn't really resolve the issue with the conflicting normal summons. Chief's second effect is another battle hand trap, allowing you to negate a battle, summon him, then banish a monster on field to the end phase. I guess it banishing permanently would have been too much to ask for on a battle trap printed in 2023. It's not unusable, but it's certainly underwhelming. The hand effects can make multiple copies in hand a positive, as you can use the additional one as interruption. It's just that that interruption has to be better than this. Our next fighter, Uppercutter, is a real headache. And I don't mean his punch, I mean his text. If he's summoned, you can add a Boxer or counter trap from deck to hand. If he's sent to grave by an effect, you can activate one of 2 other effects. Special a Boxer other than him from grave, or set a counter trap from deck. I hate the fact that this makes the mill off of spirits into a twisted gamble, where you're praying you don't hit Glassjaw, but praying you do hit Uppercutter. Where's the headache, you ask? Right here. I'd like to remind you, this card was released during Snake Eyes format. This 1-card combo would have been a little too zesty for the game to handle apparently. He also sets the counter trap without making it live immediately. Good thing it's telegraphed and useless. You see, the intended purpose is summoning him, using him for an Xyz summon, then detaching on your opponent's turn to trigger his other effect. The issue is, this effect does nothing in that scenario. Reviving a Boxer on your opponent's turn does nothing, because they're meant to be under an Xyz, not on the field. Then, since the counter trap isn't live, and your opponent knows it's there, it's actively bad. There's another issue in that none of the existing Xyz could detach him at will, and sadly, that's the only issue with this card's design that gets addressed. King Dempsey is the only card in this round that isn't pulling its punches and actually intends to win the fight. On summon, he can search or bin any level 4 or lower Fire Warrior, or a Battlin Boxing spell trap. He also has a quick effect to detach a material to protect all your Boxers from card effects for the rest of the turn. All around a great card. However, he points out another nuisance in this archetype's design. Battlin Boxer is actually 3 sub-archetypes. Battlin Boxer, Battlin Boxing, and the counter traps. What's the issue beyond a little annoyance? Well, you see, he can't search the old counter traps. Only Uppercutter gets to do that. I think you might be starting to see the problem. The deck isn't becoming more coherent, it's just getting slightly less clunky. I have a video talking about Legacy Sport and how funneling a billion effects into a single card is a bad design principle, but these cards really didn't resolve the issues they were meant to address independently. The deck doesn't need a circular, but it certainly needs more than this. The last monster in this round is Nova Kaiser's own Chaos form. This is cool and all, but one issue. What happened? The number Boxers were all based around astronomical terms. Star Cestus, referencing how stars tend to remain in place, lighting up the darkness, creating a guiding light for others. Then the transition to Comet highlights the more aggressive and dangerous approach he takes in battle. Nova refers to how he shines brighter than regular, but gradually returns to normal with each material detached. His Chaos counterpart, it's just a general. I think they forgot the wrong text on the card. He gains 200 for each material instead of 100 now. His main effect is to negate a special summon by detaching 2 materials. There's something funny about their modern boss monster being a harder to summon version of a boss monster from a deck that preceded this archetype's conception. That's where the astronomy went. Funny in a cosmic way. To be fair, a summon negate is never really going out of style. It's just sad in that sense. But hey, they have an in-archetype counter to Nibiru now, technically. General's Chaos effect is its cool effect. When a boxer goes to battle, you can send a boxer from deck or hand to grave, then absorb the boxer's opponent as material. With the original Nova Kaiser's effect, you could have attached an additional material, then with the material absorption, you now have 2 materials to detach for another negate without losing Nova Kaiser as a material. It's just a shame that both effects are once per turn. I don't think both shouldn't be, but I think at least one of them shouldn't have. So, how do you go about summoning them? Cross counter. By blowing up a Battlin Boxer or a number you control, you can negate an opponent's monster effect, then summon out a boxer from your extra that has a different name than the card you blew up. Then cross counter attaches itself to it as material. This card sounds good initially, but the longer you digest its effect, the more baffling it starts to sound. This clearly wants you to summon General, seeing as they release these cards side by side, but doing so via this card means it won't have the original Nova Kaiser as material. Okay, you can still use its powerful normal effect, right? No, you need 2 materials. The trap only provides 1, which is the trap itself, so it effectively gives you a vanilla. Okay, but it blows up the original Nova Kaiser, triggering its effect to reborn all the materials attached to it, right? Wrong. It has to be destroyed by an opponent's card, but even if it didn't, it would miss timing. This game is so good. So, why did they design this card? Well, you see, it has Cestus on the card. It's actually meant to summon Comet. A negate and a pop isn't going very far in this deck. If this was meant to be a powerful negate that cost the deck unless you use Star, incentivizing actually playing it and Comet, that would be fine. Cool design structure even, but it's not. Comet's pop effect requires the original Cestus as a material, and as established, this card doesn't facilitate that. Meaning this card is only meant to summon Dempsey, a card you are already summoning normally, or Lead Yoke. Do I have to explain why this is underwhelming? This card is so bad. I could still accept it if it were just a negate for the deck. You know, negates aren't exactly healthy design in the game, so giving a drawback on it is sportsmanlike design. But it's the only way the deck can inherently summon its new boss, and he does nothing if you do. I'm only kidding, of course. You can make him another way, with Promoter exactly. By having 3 bodies on field, and Promoter and Grave, you can use his effect to turn them all into 5s. Now you can summon General, without Nova Kaiser. The card's cool effect is the one that requires Kaiser. Not only does it require Promoter exactly, it requires Promoter doesn't get negated, which it is going to, because it's the only singular good card in the deck that can get more than 1 body on field. The only way to make him with Nova Kaiser as material is to use rank up magic. Guess what card they didn't print in this set? 7th Force is a non-rank up magic that the deck can't even search. And just like Cross Counter, it misses the entire point. Why couldn't they just print a rank up searcher? Why did we have to do this? Why is the person that designed this card employed? I couldn't tell you why they made this Barian archetype unable to search any of the Barian rank up spells. Or, you know, giving the deck its own unique rank up magic that it can actually search. If there were ways to get rank up outside of the deck's lineup, Promoter, being the deck's best card, while also archetype locking, prevents that from being an option. So they absolutely require an in-archetype rank up. Our final card and letdown is Ring Announcer. It summons a boxer from hand. This type of card design isn't good and requires another good effect to warrant playing. Sadly, it doesn't have one. Popping spell traps on an extension card is cute, but the fact the pops are tied to how many Xyz you control when you're likely using this, so you can make even one of those in the first place, defeats the entire purpose of it being there. The pop should have just been for boxers in general, and even then, it wouldn't have been that great. It's just another miss in a flurry of them. There's good groundwork for this archetype, there's just nobody treading it. Of the old lineup, only 4 are really worth playing, and they're not a lineup that serves as a strong foundation. The new cards act as though they are a strong foundation, and that causes them to fall flat on their face. The archetype was doing too little with too much, and the modern support did the bare minimum to do even littler. So what still needs tuning with the archetype? For starters, good 3s. None of the existing 3s are remotely good, so the fact we're keeping them as part of the game plan is a hard miss in execution. 2 of the level 3s clearly had this theming of using hand/grave trap effects. If they get more of those that are actually good, that'd be a massive boost for the strategy. The issue though is that they have to actually start giving them good effects on field as well as a means to actually pull them back to the field to begin with so they can actually use them to make rank 3s. You could design a level 3 boxer in a similar vein to Uni, summoning itself from hand with another boxer, then it can modulate the level on one of them. Unlike Ring Announcer, this fixes the deck's issue of too few special summons and actually helps the deck function as an Xyz strategy. They only have one rank 3, and it isn't particularly good. With 2 of its better cards locking you in archetype, it's a good idea to start building up the roster and the extra for more than just rank 4s. Since the only existing one is Commissioner, the rank 3s could consist of all the non-fighters involved in boxing. A coach that lets you activate counter traps for hand while it's on the field. A commentator that has effects that apply to the players instead of the boxers. A referee that affects all the battles that take place, using the rank 3 pool of cards as control tools for the archetype, with the rank 4s being your actual offensive measures. The deck needs way more extenders. Promoter is the only card that makes getting 3 bodies for star feasible, and it's the easiest dash of all time. Boxers should leverage the battle phase as a specific time to do extension and potentially even Xyz summon. Tenpai figured this out with synchros. It's time to actually start expanding on that, but in a way that's actually balanced. Hitting your opponent with a flurry of 1-2 punches is battle combos. Can very well also integrate feints into the strategy, throwing out attacks that bait out interactions but get hard countered, presumably from the counter traps, leaving space to design counter traps that can be used from hand in specific circumstances. For example, they could be live from hand when you're attacking, flexing the fact that you can throw out a sudden counter when you're the one dishing out the offensive blows. The idea of feints can also play into a new wave of hand trap boxers, hitting the field when you go in for a swing and potentially stopping it, then performing an Xyz summon. Then, to offset the damage you lost out by negating the attack, it could grant the Xyz you summoned an additional attack that turn. Multi-attacking becoming a part of the strategy lets you either beat your opponent to death the way God intended, or can serve as another way to make Cestus's reflect damage more potent. Similar to multi-attacking, they could also introduce multiple battle phases to signify multiple rounds. There are cards that exist that pose the idea of a second battle phase, but as of now there's no real dedicated archetype that uses multiple battle phases as an actual strategy. One of the reasons people bring up giving the deck a second battle phase is because Sparer, but I don't think you can go to a second battle phase if you can't go to the first. You cannot salvage this thing. Something that can be salvaged though is Star Cestus. While they could start printing boxers that are treated as 2 materials for a 3-man Xyz like Shark Drake, they could also implement a new flair for Cestus, printing a card that lets you convert 1 copy of a boxer into 3 before immediately Xyz summoning Cestus. This lets you still make it with all the material while also making it incredibly easy to summon. Add to the fact this would encourage you to play as many names at 3 so you can always convert into a Cestus. It also doesn't have to be Cestus specifically, but it's the only 3-mat in the archetype as of now. So this hypothetical card could also encourage making other 3-mats for the archetype, turning 3-mat Xyz into a special technique, a triple strike style in the context of this archetype, rather than the convoluted liability that it is currently. If there are more cards like this that conjure a lot of materials from thin air for an Xyz summon, it'd be poignant design to give bonus effects based on where the materials come from. A lot of the time in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, multiples of a card in hand is a massive downside. So, between giving them better hand effects and greater benefits for using multiple copies from hand with this sort of card, the deck would gain a unique strength no other deck in the game has. A missed opportunity with the deck's design is to lean into the stacking and crashing of Nova Kaiser to hit with a bunch of big dudes. Creating a Supernova card that facilitates this strategy would make the card far more appealing to play. They could turn Nova Kaiser and Star Cestus into a dual win con, channeling Star's reflect damage and Nova's attack stat buffing into one strategy, forcing all of your Boxer stats into a single fighter, likely Nova, giving you a ton of weak bodies to crash in with and get massive reflect damage off of Star's effect. Then you can deal a final blow with a supercharged Nova. Lastly, the deck needs its own rank up magic or a searcher for the Baryon rank ups. 7th Force ties in with the battling, but it's abysmal since it can only be used if you lose your number. Trying again with another quick effect rank up that introduces benefits after using them to battle makes more sense, allowing for flexibility so the card is actually playable, and giving it a stronger payoff provided you can attack before using it. It could be just like the hypothetical Boxer that provides an additional attack, or an entirely different benefit. Part of the problem with Boxers is that there's no battle phase going first. So the counter traps and General Kaiser give them a game plan going first. They just have to make the full package between that and the battle phase portion more coherent and competent. As the deck is now, it's a jumbled mess of ideas that barely function independently. They get back to training, and they won't be stuck punching well above their weight class anymore.